Da 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 da. All right, hi, and welcome to mid-March update. I've kind of gone off the rails with organizing these monthly because just been busy. I have a load of things to talk about, and I'm certain that most of them are sort of interesting. So I've got an unorganized list, and I'm gonna go through them bit by bit to talk about them. And one of the first ones that I want to talk about is a game called Psychopomp, which was recommended by, I think, yours, Mary, in the Discord. And I can't check the Discord because the Discord's not on this computer. So, yeah, it was a dungeon crawler horror game, which is great. Like, I've got one in GOG that I wanted to have a go at that was also horror dungeon crawler, and I think those genres just go together well, you know, because of the sort of isolation and loneliness that you get from dungeon crawlers and just, you know, psychological horror. You know, you can't. I mean, look at Darkest Dungeon and stuff like that. It's pretty much the stress mechanic is like baked into the game. But Psychopomp was definitely. I mean, its name suits it pretty well. Like, it is like I think someone else in the Discord server said it is a lot like milk inside a bag of milk inside a bag of milk, and the main character seems deranged, and you play as them. And there's lots of things to like about it. I think that it's got like a early From Software sort of Kingsfield vibe of just how you just don't know what's good and what's bad. Like, pulling a lever has a certain weight to it, because you just don't know if, you know, it's going to open a door behind you and something's going to come out and hit you, because the way that the combat is just unbelievably clunky, because it's supposed to be. It's a dungeon crawler. So, like, you have to be standing directly in front of something and then hit it, which means sometimes fights are a sort of a battle of attrition where you just, like, hit an enemy with a hammer, and you have to hope that their health goes to 0 before yours does. But you can move backwards whilst doing it, so I've managed to back away up a corridor and repeatedly hit an enemy with a hammer without getting hurt, which is, I think, pretty much, you know, people will figure that out. But it's pretty intense. I really like the atmosphere. I've only done one part of it so far. There's 3 parts, and it's a free game, so, like, you know. But I did the water management one because it was labeled 1, so I did that one first. And man, I was like nearly dead near the start. I was not prepared for it, but I still managed to go through and out, and it was pretty entertaining. Like, I really enjoyed playing it, which I was not expecting to do based on the outset and how clunky it was. I didn't think it was going to be as clunky as it was, but when I actually started playing it, it was clunky, but it was still enjoyable. So yeah, I like that, and I love the way that when the character takes damage, they have a little picture of their face on it, which is about the only thing that you can check to gauge their health without manually checking the stats by opening up the inventory. So you can, like, watch them seemingly they start smiling more and more in a deranged way the more damage that they take, which is just really entertaining. So yeah, that's one that I'm looking forward to getting through to talk about. It's a free game though, so I'm kind of torn between putting it in with some of the other games in the next 7 free games video. It is quite long, so because I spent like 30 minutes just doing one part of it, so it's going to be much longer than some of the others, but I don't think that really matters. I might put it in with the list, but I might do it separately. If the footage ends up to be, like, you know, over 2 hours, then I'll just, like, make a separate video, because if I've got more than enough to talk about, then, you know, making a 6 to 10 minute video on a game of that length is fine. It's just the real reason why I started doing the 7 free horror games was to lump together a bunch of games that I was completing very, very quickly, and to have a 5-minute review on a game that's 5 minutes, like, I'm either going to be reusing footage or showing the whole game, so, like, you know. Yeah, so that's the first one on the list. The next one is Curse, Eye of Isis, and I have another update to talk about with this one. The games that that I started doing a while ago, I think it was Power to the Patrons 2, which popped up, where I gave I have a screenshot in the back here. basically, there was like, it was tied between like 3 or 4 games, or I think it was maybe just 3 games. But it was Curse Eye of Isis, The Cat Lady, and Silent Hill Shattered Memories. And Silent Hill Shattered Memories I am now struggling with because I'm having to use an emulator now because the footage was ending up from when I bought a physical copy of the game for the Wii. And the problem is not only was it just a nightmare to play and control, the video files were ending up like 120 something gigabytes per hour, which is unholy just because of the amount of film grain, which is the biggest pain to deal with in terms of recording. And you can, like, the thing is, it was either knock the quality down, which again, if you try and drop the quality when recording something with film grain, it tends to just distort more, which made it almost like really difficult to look at. Or you just leave it at 120 gigs, which was just, you know, I'd done the first hour of the game, and considering it's 8 hour, I would need like an entire hard drive to that game itself. So I kind of just shelved that specific version of the game and went, well, what can I do? So then I tried using an emulator on this system that I had that was designed specifically to do basically all types of emulation. There's a front end thing called Batocera, and basically what Batocera does is it's like a front end for loads of different emulators, and it allowed me to just copy all the, you know, all my emulated or physical games onto this thing so that I could just play them that way. And it worked pretty well until there was an issue and I had to swap something out and did what I thought was an upgrade, but now the graphics card that I ended up putting in this computer so that it would play the game is not supported by Batocera, which means I now can't play Silent Hill Shattered Memories or any of the other PS2 games that I was supposed to do. Because another one that I wanted to do was return to Rule of Rose to try and get through some more of that, but I can't do any of them at the moment. So yeah, because I'm finding that the reason why I'm using Batocera instead of just emulating it on my actual computer is because that I keep on running into various problems with the PS2 emulator. Like, that's the thing that's getting at me the most. I can't seem to get that to work properly, so that's why that's on the shelf. The Cat Lady is on the shelf because, once again, the recording software absolutely hates it when the game is running at a different resolution. It causes loads of strange errors in the audio video. So when I start the Cat Lady, it'll go from like 1080p desktop down to 640 by 480, and just every time that I record, I don't know, like 5 or so minutes of that game and then pause it to see how it's going, the audio video sync is out. So, and I can't seem to fix that. So I don't know what to do with that at the moment. I'm thinking I'm just gonna have to like try and play it on another computer to try and record that. That's just an irritating problem I can't seem to get around at the moment. It only really happens because if OBS was recording at like 640 by 480 the whole time, it would be fine, but because I have to push record and then then start the Cat Lady, the resolution change screws it up. Sorry I'm getting really technical with this, but there's just like, these are the problems that I'm facing. However, Curse Eye of Isis was the only one that I'm not having that many problems with. I did play at least 2 or 3 hours of the game, but I was having so many game-breaking glitches and bugs on a computer that I stopped, and then I returned to it recently because while I was looking for a patch to try and fix these problems, I found that the game had been released on GOG, which I didn't even think to look at this point. So I started playing that version of the game, and it's been absolutely flawless with full controller support, which has been unbelievably nice. So yeah, I'm playing that version of the game now, and I'm catching up to where I was, which is great because I have to start the game from the start, unfortunately. But yeah, I'm really enjoying Curse Eye of Isis. It's not a particularly difficult game because of how, I mean, the puzzles are almost insulting in a way. Like, it's like you go up to a you find the solution to the puzzle half the time before you find the puzzle. Like, there was one that was like, oh, you can't find the key to this drawer, but then I found the key like 2 minutes, literally like 15 steps away from the drawer that I'm supposed to use the key on. The only thing that's been challenging in the game so far has been trying to figure out what key opens what door sometimes, because it's like, you've got the key, and it's like, okay, which one of the 15 doors that I've seen is locked is this key for? The combat's very, very easy. Like, they've given me, I've got like a rifle, a pistol, and a police baton or a truncheon. And for 90% of the enemies, the truncheon just works unbelievably well. Like, it's the enemies have like such a specific pattern in the way that you hit them 3 times, then they'll fall on the ground, and then they'll get back up. In which case, if you just time it right, you can just hit them immediately again, and then that's it. They're down. All you gotta do is walk away. And I love, one thing that I do like about this, despite the fact that the combat is very brainless, is you see like the spirit of this Egyptian curse coming out of the bodies and then disappearing, which I really love. I really like that. But other than that, it's been sort of spooky in places. The atmosphere, it's not a scary game by any margin. There were a couple of points where I was like, oh, this is getting intense, but nothing really so far. I think it's a product of one of like the early 2000s. Like, it's one of those games that's like clearly inspired by, like, you know, Alone in the Dark and Resident Evil, but doesn't really have, like, it feels like it's just trying to copy it without understanding what made it good. So yeah, it's a good game, but, like, you know. The next thing on the list is psychological horror, and yeah, there's a lot to talk about here with how that's going. I watched Repulsion, and yeah, there's a lot to unpack in terms of Repulsion, just because of all the things that come along with it. Not only just the very unpleasant rape scenes that are in the thing, but also the controversy with the director. And yeah, I think I'm probably going to be making 2 versions of this, because I also kind of was thinking, like, well, one thing to make it nicer for Patreon would be to have, like, because there's no currently, as far as I'm aware on Patreon, there's no sort of like copyright rules. So they're not going to content ID me for stuff like that, so I can afford to, like, put stuff on there. I'm not going to be, like, uploading the whole film, you know, because that is blatant piracy. I'm just going to have, like, you know, the same sort of thing I would have in a normal video, like clips for the films, but also I can have, like, licensed music and stuff in that, and just have that version of the thing, and then, like, a YouTube specific version that just cuts out Repulsion completely, because I really don't want, you know, to either upset people, because I think nowadays especially, most people will know more about what Roman Polanski has done as opposed to what Roman Polanski has made, and I really don't want to get in the middle of an argument about art versus the artist and everything, so I'll just make a version without Repulsion in it, and potentially some of the other things, because, like, there's going to be so many different controversial topics to talk about, from, like, you know, Adam Lost Memories, child abuse, suicide in detention, and, you know, all the other stuff that's going into this thing, as well as, like, I'm potentially going to be talking about devotion as well, and some other things. So there's a lot to talk about, and there's so much more to write about it, that it really is like I want this to be a very big video, but that just means it's going to take a lot of time. So I'm thinking of just putting it not on the back burner, because I'm still going to be working towards it, you know, pretty much as often as I can, but I also want to not have, like, months on end where I don't make anything, because I have made other things, because, like, you know, I finished, you would have seen this if you're not on Patreon, then I've already finished 2 or 3 of the Halloween videos that I'm working on at the moment. One of them is Adam Lost Memories, the other one is Dark Pictures Anthology Devil and Me, and then the last one was the first one, which was Burnhouse Lane, and they're all great. Like, they really are. Like, Adam Lost Memories especially was fantastic, although Burnhouse Lane was incredible too, and I really wanted to cover that at some point. I didn't know what to expect when going into that, but apparently it's what the people behind Harvester Games called the Cat Lady 2. So I've technically done the Cat Lady 2 before I've done the Cat Lady, but, you know, c'est la vie and all that. But either way, that's one that I'm working on. Putting a lot of time. I've got so much more to do for the psychological horror video, because I wanted to include stuff from Alan Wake 2, which is the next thing on the list that I was going to talk about. Because I finished playing Alan Wake, and Yeah, I wasn't the biggest fan of the game, but I appreciate what it was trying to do, and I quite like it. I like what it was trying to do. Like, I don't like majority. I thought the combat was just unbelievably tedious. Like the fact that the enemies didn't really change throughout the entire game, and the combat didn't really change throughout the entire game, and it was like 10 hours long. It really tested the limits. I'm hoping to get that video done, and that will be posted probably before any of the upcoming videos that I said I was going to work on, because they're just taking too long, and I don't want to have months with nothing. So I'm going to post Alan Wake 2 and then possibly Graveyard Shift and then go back to work. Although so there will be something in between. So yeah, Alan Wake 2. The thing is, when I tried playing it back in October, I hadn't finished playing Alan Wake 1. In fact, I'd only played like 1 or 2 chapters at best of Alan Wake 1, and really just did not understand what was happening in Alan Wake 2 at all. It was so disorientating that I just, it felt really hard to get immersed in the situation where because I was just so out of it, because I didn't get what, the relevance of things, what the importance of things were. And now I can, after having finished Alan Wake 1, I can go like, oh, that's that, and, link things to the previous game where, and have some sort of anchor into the experience, rather than just feeling that the whole thing is just really superficial because I don't understand it. So, I'm enjoying, although I'm currently enjoying Alan Wake 2 a lot more than I'm enjoying Alan Wake 1. But yeah, they are very, very similar to Twin Peaks, which is something that I'm going to have a hard time not mentioning in either of the reviews for them when they eventually come out. So yeah, there's a lot to talk about for that as well. But I'm only about 3 chapters into Alan Wake 2, and I have heard it's very long, so that's going to be quite a long time in the making. So I'm not going to be able to finish Alan Wake 2 before the psychological horror video is going to come out. So there'll be there'll be some mention of Alan Wake 2 in the psychological horror video, but there won't be, a full, one that will definitely be done before Alan Wake 2 at this point. I'm hoping Alan Wake 2 will be like a Halloween video, because that's the sort of time frame that I'm looking at for it at the moment. So there's that. Another one that I'm talking about for the psychological horror video, to skip down the list a bit, is Fran Bow, and I can't believe that I've been sitting on Fran Bow for so long. Like, I think I bought it like 4 years ago, and I've only really started seriously playing it in the last 2 weeks, and it's great. It's really good, and I'm really pleased that I've taken the time to play it. And I think I'm about halfway through it at the moment. And I was really struggling with some of the puzzles to begin with, but I was almost like going to look up some stuff, but I've found that if you just push the tab button, it shows you all the things that you can interact with, which has made things a lot easier. But the game is fantastic. I love the art style of it, and I love that I don't know where it's going. It is so strange and unpredictable. Like, I was waiting for, because there's the big emphasis of the very early part of the game is you must get your cat. You have to get your cat. And then you've got to run away to, your Aunt Grace. And I was expecting to either never find the cat, or find the cat was dead or something like that. But chapter 2 found the cat, and I'm like, oh great, I've got the cat. But the thing that's getting me the most is the thing that I talked about in the script update, where I'm slowly losing grip on reality, because when you take the basic premise of the game is not to insult it, it's like the Medium, where there's the 2 worlds, and when you take the tablets you see the nightmare sort of world where everything's dead, and you start to see things how they really are, and and I mean in a third eye open sort of way, because you can see the illnesses that people are suffering from in the mental institution. When you start the game, you can see that there's shadows hanging around these poor children, and you understand it because you can visualize it. But when it comes to the real world, you don't see anything. You can't see things for how they are. And as the game's been progressing, the real world has been getting more and more surreal to the point where I'm like, where am I now? Like I think I'm on the 3rd chapter, and basically like I am in some fairy tale world where Fran has been turned into a tree, and it's like I haven't taken the tablets because I can't, because they're not part of my inventory. And I'm like, so this is what it's like, representing her going off her medication and then like losing complete grip on reality. But all the way, even back in chapter 2, there were points where I was like, so I'm like in this hut that's supposed to be a giant ant's home, but then when I take the tablets, it's not like a giant ant's home at all. It's a hollowed out tree where a dead pest exterminator is laying on the ground covered in ants. And I'm like, so is the nightmare is the nightmare the reality now? And I thought that was brilliant. I've really enjoyed, you know, how that's coming together. I'm sorry if I've given spoilers for the game, but I'm really enjoying it. Like I want to get through to the end of that, but I have so many other things that I've sort of started and began to do, and I probably shouldn't. But yeah, that's one. The next one I want to talk about is a game called The Voidness. It's a LiDAR game, which I'd seen just a short of it on YouTube. I don't usually watch like other horror content on YouTube. I like to just like make my own opinions, really. And I started watching this thing and I was like, oh, that's such a cool idea, because LiDAR is just projecting a bunch of little dots across the room so that you can sort of map the room out when it's in complete darkness. And it's fantastic. It's such a cool idea. And the game that I'm playing isn't even the one that I saw in the short, which is, I guess, a little disappointing. But I've been like so tense and nervous all the way through this thing, because it feels like you can never fully understand what's going on in front of you. Like, things move and shift, and even though they've gone out of their way to like color specific objects as like red is movement, and you know that movement is obviously bad, so that you can scan a corridor and see like the sort of the squares moving towards you, and it's just it gives you a very like visceral fear of the unknown. Even though you can sort of see what's there, you don't really know what it is, or if it knows where you are. And I love it. It's brilliant. I was really not. The game doesn't really start off with the whole LiDAR thing, and it was still that was pretty intense on its own. But now that I'm in like this LiDAR heavy area, it's been great. It does get a bit disorientating, which I think is just the sad reality of a game based on LiDAR. Like you don't always know. It's hard to like visually map out an area when you don't really know what the area looks like, if you know what I mean. So yeah, that's but other than that, that's a great game. I can't wait to talk about that one as well. I played another one on Xbox called The Tartarus Key, which is about a girl who awakens in a mansion to find out that she's like, it's like a setup, like she's locked in a room, she doesn't know how she got there, and she has to solve puzzles to get out, and it's an escape the room thing, and I have yet to see anything that I would truly sort of go like, yes, this is horror, but I'm going to stick with it a bit longer to see if, you know, it goes that way, because at the moment it's been a bit light on that, but it's still got the atmosphere, so like I can't complain about that too much at the moment. I'm not gonna put the huge focus on this one, because like the problem with a lot of these games are that sometimes I'll get something and it won't really feel like a horror game for ages, and you know, you don't really know where it's gonna go or if it ever will. So yeah, that's a problem that's come up. There's After Dream as well, and I did start, that one is in the list for the games to choose from in the latest Power of the Patrons, but I did start playing it a little before putting it in the list. And it's a side-scrolling pixel art Silent Hill. is the I guess the most reductive way to talk about it. But I quite like it so far. I like some of the mechanics. I like the way that it looks for sure. But it does feel like a very, you know, inspired by Silent Hill sort of thing, so I'm waiting to see where that's going as well. I haven't played very much of that, probably about half an hour at best. Another one, there's Boomen, which I have lots of different multiplayer ones that I've played with my friends to talk about, but Boomen is probably the only one that's probably going to be getting its own video, because some of them are just so unremarkable that there is nothing interesting really to talk about in terms of a video. Most of them are just sort of like Phasmophobia, but this or but that, and essentially Boomen isn't too different from that, except that you're trying to rob the house that you're in, and the ghosts are, well, I guess trying to stop you, but more trying to kill you. And there's a lot of uniqueness about it in the way that some of the ghosts work, but ultimately, like, most of the things in it have been done in other games. But I found it pretty enjoyable, and there were definitely some moments where it could have been either better, but there were lots of parts that were genuinely pretty good for these types of games, because I've ended up playing I don't know how many of them now, and I think I would say quite confidently that Boomen's in at least the top 5 so far of the, I don't know, 13 or so of these multiplayer horror. It's not up there with like Phasmophobia and Forewarned. Those are two of like the best, but it was pretty damn entertaining, especially playing it with like multiple friends, because the problem is getting people together to do it is kind of difficult. But yeah, it was really good actually. I was way more into that than I expected. I've already recorded all of that, so that's one that I just have to write. There's that. There's Sally Face is another one that's going straight into the Halloween thing, and that is a weird adventure. I played through all of that a couple of months ago, and it's just another one that's on the to-do list, and I probably won't mention it again until it's finished. But it's a very bizarre adventure, especially the later chapters where you just don't know where things are going. Most of it plays out like, just a point-and-click adventure where you're going from, area to area, just solving specific things with like very strange visuals, to say the least. The whole thing feels like it was animated by like in a teenager's art book sort of thing. And when you find stuff that's disturbing, it really is like quite out there and weird. And as the series has sort of progressed, the story feels like it's been getting slowly out of control, to the point where there were loads of sections where I was unsure how it was going to progress. Like, it felt like, I had already lost, but then it just keeps going. And it was very impressive. I'm not going to say it's the best or the scariest, but it was definitely unique, which is one of the reasons why I wanted it to go into Halloween. Next one was Choo Choo Charles. I was not expecting to play this game. In fact, I thought it was like very silly, but I ended up getting the game and playing it anyway, and I did not expect to play the entire thing through in one sitting. It's very short, about 2.5 hours. And yeah, it was, the thing is, I don't really find it frightening at all. Like, there are a couple of moments where it was like, I think it's like the exciting type of frightening when you're like, something's coming towards you and you're like, ha ha ha, as it chases you. But it wasn't really a scary game, but it was very entertaining and quite a lot of fun. So I think I played that all the way to the end and getting like nearly doing all of the side quests that I could possibly do, and that still only took me 2.5 hours, so it's a very short game. But yeah, that's another one for Halloween. I don't really have a great deal to say about that one. But yeah. The jump scares video and the buying guide are the last two. I haven't put as much effort into these two as I have with the psychological horror one, because psychological horror was like top of the list to try and do. So the jump scares video, I think I've written about half of it, but I seem to be missing some of the script that I thought I had, so I'm not sure if I've accidentally saved over it, which is just an unfortunate fact of using Dropbox, unfortunately. But I've either got a lot more of that to write or a lot less of that to write. Luckily, I already have most of the things that I want to cover in terms of footage for that one and for the psychological horror one. Now, there's only like a couple more games that I want to get enough of or record of so that I can get on with the writing, and then after the writing will be the editing. And I'm hoping that, especially for the psychological horror video, that it's going to be pretty impressive because of this sheer amount of footage that I'm planning on working with. And it's going to be quite a long video, I hope, because I really want to make something special That's the goal, to make something really impressive. The buying guide, however, that's really just a case of when I get on with it. Like, if I'd chosen to do this first, I probably would have finished it by now, to be honest. But I decided to go for the hardest one first. And yeah, well, that will pay off eventually. But the buying guide is mostly just being like, I decided to I'm going to try and organize it in the way of like a tree, where like this is the base experience. Like, you see all the flowcharts where it's like, oh, start here and then work your way up. And I was trying to think what would be my personal go-to best experience, what game I would choose as like the beginner's game. And I was thinking probably like Amnesia: The Dark Descent, because that's where my story for like horror games began. And I'm thinking, well, if you like the psychological elements, you can go into psychological horror, and if you like the other elements, you can go like, oh, so like, you know, for psychological horror, well, try Silent Hill. For if you like the more sort of general game design, like running away from monsters sort of thing, try Outlast, and then work your way up that way. If you like more story aspects of it, maybe try A Machine for Pigs. And if you like that sort of thing, then maybe try some more of the walking simulator type games. Not to be rude, but like that is the sort of thing that you'll be looking at. Like, maybe try, you know, Devotion or Detention, or games that are more like that. And I think that's the sort of like the three-pronged route that I want to take with it. But obviously things are going to keep on branching out that way. And also to talk about, you know, to be like, well, the best way to play this would be to try this version of the game, or to try that version of the game, and then talk about what systems they're on. And that's going to be a fairly lengthy video, but it won't really require, you know, loads and loads of footage, because I can just, you know, luckily I can just reference my own videos at that point. So if I'm only going to be talking about games that I've covered anyway, which is like still quite a fair, I mean, like at least 200 or something, I think, at this point. But there'll be enough. I only really want to talk about the ones that really matter, and sort of be like, you know, this is where I would begin. And if you want, there are more and more niche experiences the further you go into it. So yeah, but that's where that's looking at the moment. This has now been a 32-minute update video, but yeah, that's how things are looking at the moment. I've done a fair amount of things. I've finished quite a few things that you've already seen, but I haven't done an update in a while, mostly just because I've been finishing bits and pieces or starting things, and technical problems are just frustrating, and I'm trying to work my way around them, and hopefully post these ones as soon as they're finished. I'm working on, out of the stuff that's on the list at the moment, let me just bring up the Patreon list for the actual ones that I am working on now, because most of the stuff that I've been talking about is things that are going to be turning up in the future. I mean these are going to be turning up in the future, but like I am working on Carson House. This is the one that I'm supposed to be doing soon, and then after that I'll be doing Alan Wake. But there's lots of different things that are like, you know, in the list. But those two are the ones I want to work on, because I think I'm going to be doing... I want to have cast... I've been doing too many Fears to Fathom games, and I want to sort of space them out a bit, because I don't really want like this year to be defined by how many Fears to Fathom games I ended up playing, even though I've now got all of them ready in terms of recording. But yeah, that's those are the ones I think I'm going to be coming up with next. I've already started writing Fears to Fathom, and I haven't started writing Alan Wake, but Alan Wake I kind of need to do as soon as possible, because I've recorded the game on PS5, which means it's 4K footage, and that was 270 something gigabytes worth of footage for Alan Wake, which is a lot, and I need to get it off the editing drive so that I can edit other things, basically. Anyway, yeah, so that's where it stands. That's the in-depth review of where it's all going at the moment. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff I want to talk about, and there's a lot of stuff I want to get done, and it doesn't feel like there's enough hours in the day to get through all of it at a certain point with, you know, work and other things that I have to do. But I am once again very grateful for everyone on Patreon who, you keeps allowing me to do this, because really, at this point, if it wasn't for the people on Patreon, I'm not sure I would bother continuing doing this, because there's not really been a great deal of rewards for doing it on YouTube. The growth is just so painfully slow, and it does get extremely disheartening at points where I look at comments from like 5-6 years ago, and it's like, you're gonna blow up soon, I can feel it. And it's like, yeah, people have been saying that for years. People have been saying that from like the first Halloween I did in like 2020. People have been saying it. I mean, that's only 4 years ago, but people have been saying it like for ages, and I'm just watching the numbers crawl up slowly. And the thing is, I realized at a certain point that I just want to let that kind of stuff go. Like, I don't really want to care that much about growth. I just want to make something good. And that's the way forward, I think, for me. Like, I saw ProZD talk about something, very similar. And I agree. Like, I think that I'm just going to do my own thing and see how far I can go with it, or how, I always believe in making something good over, like, making hundreds of followers, I suppose. I always thought that one would lead to the other, but it doesn't necessitate that on YouTube because of, like, the algorithm and stuff. And yeah, it does get a little disheartening, but, like, I think I derive more satisfaction out of making something good than receiving loads of praise, I guess. But yeah. Anyway, I've waffled on a little too much this time. It's now coming up to 40 minutes. So it's time to stop and say thank you once again to everyone who's subscribed and all the people who are on Patreon. And thank you, and I'll see you soon, hopefully, for one of the videos at least that I've done. And have a nice day and everything. See you later.